Until then...
Listen. Howdy.
Drew Goddard's Bad Times at the El Royale was one of my favourite films of 2018, and holy shit, I cannot believe that was last year. While on the surface, this movie is nothing more than a flashy throwback to a genre and time period that has long since passed. However, beneath the movie's beautiful style, thanks to production designer Martin Wist, this film is unbelievably heavy. Bad Times at the El Royale focuses on a group of people who believe God has turned his back on them. Or better yet, they have turned their back on God. This film is all about religion and faith. And if you look at the delicately designed sets, you'll notice crosses throughout the entire film. Much like Martin Scorsese's 2016 masterpiece, Silence, this is a movie that forces the audience to raise the question, where is God amongst tragedy? Through the characters of Father Flynn, Emily Summerspring, Miles Miller, and Billy Lee, Goddard raises this question in fascinating manners. But does he answer this monumental query, or does he leave it up to us, the watchers? With Doc O'Kelly, Goddard addresses the first of many strained relationships with God. However, when the audience first meets him, he's actually decked out in a pretty sweet First Reformed costume. It's no surprise that Goddard introduces the audience to him in this manner. The first time we lay our eyes on the holy man is when Darlene Sweets asks,
"Are you lost, Father?"
Here, Goddard is playing with double entendre. As the audience will soon discover, O'Kelly suffers from dementia. Throughout the film, O'Kelly finds himself stranded, as he reveals in a heartbreaking monologue.
I wake up some days and I can't remember who I am. Strangest feeling, you look around and you're someone else and you don't know who that is.
When O'Kelly mentions how he feels like he's someone else, this could also be seen as another reason as to why he's dressed as a priest. He's acting like someone else. That is, Goddard foreshadowing this reveal, laying some little sprinkles in there just for the audience to question and interpret. During the previously mentioned monologue, way before O'Kelly discusses his disease, he asks Darlene if he can confess, which is quite ironic coming from someone who apparently is a priest. As it turns out, O'Kelly is at the El Royale to retrieve stolen cash from a job gone wrong years prior. This horrible mistake led to his arrest and the death of his younger brother. This dilemma takes a toll on our lovable criminal. Where is God in all of this? Is Goddard showing the audience the lies of religion through the character right here? Is it all a sham? Is O'Kelly's dementia some bizarre sense of karma from God or a higher power? Interestingly, in the New Testament, there's nothing to say that illness is a direct response from God. However, it does not reject the connection between illness and one's relationship with God. As the audience discovers O'Kelly's situation and his disease, we can only imagine how strained this relationship really is.
I'm not really a priest.
No shit.
With Emily Summerspring, Goddard highlights someone who believes God has turned his back on her. Emily's childhood was, safe to say, horrible. It is implied that her father was brutal, often beating her and her younger sister, Rose. Here, Goddard raises an interesting point: where is God amongst abuse? Further tying into the film's overall theme and question. If he were to exist and love his children so tenderly, wouldn't he attempt to rescue them in their time of great need? In this character, the audience sees what can happen to you when you have absolutely no hope and no faith. When you're constantly dealt great tragedy, you oppose systematic rule and take the law and the world into your own hands. This is initially seen when Emily murders Dwight Broadbeck, believing him to be just like her father, another man who will abuse her and her sister. The great tragedy of Emily and her sister is that her sister will always find her way into a manipulative and abusive older male, despite all of Emily's attempts to save her. In the climactic encounter between Billy Lee, Emily, and Rose, Lee reveals this to Emily.
Rosie, are you mine?
Of course.
When Emily is murdered by Billy Lee, her sister doesn't even give a shit. She takes one little glance, and that's it. This murder yet again puzzles the audience. Why is God so ignorant? It leads the audience to ask, had Emily not murdered Broadbeck, would this have been any different?
To be honest, I don't remember what you looked like before this, but I think you should make peace with the fact that things have changed.
Without a doubt, the most tragic character in Bad Times at the El Royale is Miles Miller. Throughout the film, Miles begs O'Kelly to absolve him from his sins. When Broadbeck walks into Miles' office and sees him with a needle in his arm, the audience assumes that this is what he's referring to. However, to quote Stephen A. Smith,
"We have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived."
as it turns out, the El Royale Hotel is notorious for secret getaways for politicians, celebrities, and clergymen alike. Throughout the hotel's establishment, management has been watching their guests, recording the important people, and using them for blackmail. Miles is the latest in a long line of bellboys who has seen some horrific shit.
I seen a senator beat up a horse so bad she had to shove her own stockings back where her teeth used to be just to keep from bleeding out through the mouth. Junkie paint sorry on the wall in his own filth. Like that'd make it easier when I cleaned all that shit off his cold body.
Of course, Miles did nothing about this. He watched and listened to management. He didn't act up, he didn't stop the recording. He sat there and did what he was told. Some could even interpret Miles as an angel, reporting back to God, or in the film's case, management. During the climactic sequence, Billy Lee remarks,
Hey, buddy. Listen, if you were so worried about your soul, maybe you shouldn't have been doing all this bad shit in the first place.
As it's later revealed, Miles was a part of the Vietnam War and killed 123 people. When Miles wakes following a horrid night at war, he walks through a valley of mangled bodies and drops to his knees, begging God for forgiveness. Something that he believes will never come. And in the film's case, it never really does. As the character dies, O'Kelly, who has told Miles that he's not a real priest, honors his dying wish and forgives him for his sins.
Give to him the time that you have left. Not too late. No. It's never too late.
But Flynn, I repent.
You are forgiven.
Now, ultimately, the irony of it all is that Miles probably isn't forgiven because, as we know, O'Kelly isn't a real priest. He can't absolve him of his sins because he's not a part of the church. But that raises an even more interesting point. What is the church? If someone feels forgiveness for you, isn't that as good as a priest?
The El Royale is a bi-state establishment. You have the option to stay in either the great state...
I'll take this one.
In Billy Lee, Goddard crafts one of my personal favourite antagonists. Now, I absolutely love villains like this. When we have a villain who possesses something as interesting as a god complex, you've won my heart.
What does God mean to all of you? Is he some being in the sky? Do you pray to him at night? Do you ask him to watch over you? Is he here with us now? Or maybe there is no God, huh? Maybe it's all lies.
Lee is a sadistic cult leader. Think Charles Manson meets fucking Marlon Brando. Lee's cult is actually super similar to Manson's. Much like Manson, Lee loved members of his cult and had an unbelievable level of charisma. Interestingly, Lee is the one character who summarizes the entire film and the filmmaker's intentions. At a cult meeting, Lee asks two members of his family, the previously mentioned Rose Summerspring and Millie, to tussle, with the winner being the woman Lee will sleep with. As the two girls begin their battle, again, Lee raises another interesting point.
While they're fighting, what am I doing? Huh? Because I sure as hell ain't fighting. What am I doing? I'm watching them. I'm getting off on them. And I'm coming over here, and I'm taking what's theirs. And they didn't even notice. They're too busy playing my game.
Of course, Lee is referring to himself as God, and Rose and Millie as humanity. This sequence is a perfect metaphor for the movie itself. The audience is sitting back watching these people brutally kill each other, and yet we can't do anything about it. We love it. Fascinatingly, Lee is also commenting on the setup of the El Royale Hotel, specifically how management have glass windows behind every single hotel room, witnessing everything and recording whatever they deem interesting. Management literally watches its guests do awful things, and yet they get off on it.
Let's have ourselves an allegory.
Bad Times at the El Royale is one of the great underrated films of the last few years. Through its fascinating discussion of religion and God's disinterest in humanity, Goddard has crafted a movie that will be analysed and talked about for decades to come. Interestingly, the filmmaker never straight up answers the question regarding God and tragedy. He never tells the audience that God is or isn't present. With faith, we can hope that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Is it a coincidence that Darlene and O'Kelly are the only two characters who survived the events of the El Royale?
I think not!
Was that God looking out for them? Or was it their actions that got them out of there? Hi everyone, thank you very much for watching this week's video. As you can tell, I freaking love this movie. I think it's like insanely good. And I hope you guys do too. I hope Bad Times at the El Royale has a spike in iTunes rentals or fucking Netflix views or whatever, because it's a great movie that deserves to be seen. And yeah, I think it's one of my favorite films of last year. For sure. Subscribe, share the video around, I'll see you guys super soon. Bye bye.